Hangboarding is a training tool designed specifically for climbers to increase our finger strength on the wall. It's one of the most fundamental training tools you can use to progress your climbing ability. Today we're going to go through an entire guide on hangboarding, from what the edge sizes are to what kind of protocols you can choose and how to build a weekly schedule of hangboarding around your goals. If you're not sure if you should start hangboarding or not, there's really no hard or fast rule as to who's ready or at what point, what V grade you should be climbing, how long you should be climbing for. But in general, you don't want to start right away when you start climbing. It's really easy to get injured too soon if you start right away with hangboarding. Instead, you want to have a good foundation of climbing first, because at the end of the day, your tendons are going to get so strong just from climbing alone. I generally recommend you wait at least a year until you start hangboarding and you're climbing moderately difficult, so around the V5 to V7 range. So first, let's take a look at an actual hangboard. So this is the Beastmaker 2000. This is probably the gold standard of hangboards at the moment, and it is likely the most common one you'll see at your local climbing gym. The smallest edge on the hangboard is going to be the bottom left-hand corner, and this is true with most hangboards. So on the Beastmaker, it's about 15 millimeters on the bottom left and bottom right. This is going to be your smallest rung, and lots of experienced climbers will be doing their max hangs on this rung. If you're a little bit newer to hangboarding, you're probably not going to start on the bottom left-hand corner rung. You'll likely start on the one right above it. It's about double the size, but it serves the exact same purpose. Next to these rungs is going to be your pockets. So pockets are used to train single finger strength, which again is very advanced, and if you're a beginner, you're probably not going to start with single finger hangs. Next to those are 4 sets of 2 finger pockets. So this is a little bit less intense than just using your one finger, and they're all different depths. Some of them are a bit sloped, like the ones just to the right of the center, and others are a lot larger, like the ones above those. Moving directly to the center now, you've got your single arm rungs. So these rungs don't have a matching counterpart on the other side. There's just one of them. So of course, if you're a beginner climber, you're not gonna want to just use one arm when you're training hangboard for the first time. So what you can do is use a band or use another kind of rope or something to hang on to while you're using your one arm hangs. So this is a bit more intense than just doing your 2 arm hangs, but it is another option for hangboard training, and we'll get more into that later. Above all of the rungs, you're gonna have your slopers. So they start on the Beastmaker with the easiest ones, the least inclined ones in the middle, and they progressively get more inclined as you go further out right. Before we move on, let's take a look at the 3 different ways you can hang on a hangboard. The first way is gonna be your open hand position. This is where all 4 pads are in contact with the hangboard, and you're almost opening up and hanging directly down on your fingers. You're not trying to bend them or hold them too hard. You're just going to almost relax and keep your fingers straight. Now, because we're trying to get that pinky onto the hangboard, your middle finger is probably going to be slightly bent in order to get that pinky on there, but that's okay. The main goal is to just get all 4 fingers up and likely have your index finger and your pinky fully straight with the other 2 a little bit bent. This is by far the safest option when it comes to just getting into hangboarding. And as a beginner, I would definitely recommend starting with this grip position. It's a little bit more gentle on the tendons, and I think you'll find it's an easier place to start. The second grip position is going to be your half crimp. This is just like the open hand, where all 4 pads are going to be on the rung, except you're going to bend your fingers to 90 degrees. This is a little bit more strenuous on the fingers, but it is more of an advanced kind of way to hang on a hangboard. And I think you'll find that more advanced climbers and climbers that have been hanging for a little bit longer are going to default to this kind of position. Now, there is technically a 3rd way to hang on a hangboard, and this is your full crimp position, but I am not going to recommend this. In fact, I'm going to recommend against it. I would never do a full crimp on a hangboard. It's just a little bit too intense on your fingers, and you also want to be able to bail off a hangboard whenever possible. If you feel a little twinge, or if you're starting to open up and it's getting too heavy, you want to be able to really get that hand out of there. And if you have it locked into a full crimp position, it can sometimes be harder to feel when that point is coming, or feel if something's about to twinge. It can also put way more strain on your tendons. So you want to stay away from that full crimp position at all costs, not even when you're advanced. Don't do this. Now, when it comes to hanging on the sloper rungs, it's a little bit of a different technique, of course. So talking specifically about the Beastmaker 2000, The middle one is gonna be your easiest one to hang on. And basically you're gonna treat it like a ledge. You're gonna have almost all of your hand on it, and you're gonna maybe slightly crimp the edge of the sloper at the end. For the more inclined slopers, you're actually gonna do the exact same technique, but you're gonna emphasize that little crimp at the edge a little bit more. Now, because this is wood, it's not really the normal friction that you get on a normal climbing hold. So it is a lot harder to stick to this surface. So you're gonna wanna employ a little bit of finger strength in this and slightly crimp and try to get those pads really pressing on the end of the sloper. And finally, if you're gonna hang on the single finger monos or the 2-finger pockets, it's basically going to be the exact same as your open hand grip when you're using all 4 fingers. You're gonna keep your fingers fully extended and you're just gonna hang down. So now that we've gone through all the rungs on the hangboard, let's take a look at all the different type of training protocols you can use in order to achieve your goals with your finger strength. First up, we're gonna take a look at repeaters. Repeaters is a type of hangboard training that is good for endurance and capacity. Basically, you have multiple short hangs with very short rests, and you repeat that. So for example, you might do 7 seconds on the hangboard, 3 seconds off the hangboard, and then 7 on, 3 off, 7 on, 3 off, and repeat that 6 times, and then rest 1 to 2 minutes between each set. This is great for building finger endurance and recruitment capacity. Climbers that do longer sessions or circuit training or even lead climbing would benefit from this kind of hangboard training. In terms of how much load you want to put on with this type of training, it's definitely going to be a lot lower because the volume of your training is so high. Because it is repeaters, you're not having much rest between each rep. You're going to want to keep the weight at body weight or just a little bit of added weight on a medium to small rung. Next is max hangs, and this is one of the most common types of hangboard training you'll see out there. Max hangs train your raw finger strength. So basically you'll have some short, very heavy hangs at a near maximal intensity. So basically as much added weight as you can. As you can imagine, this is a fairly intense type of training, so you want to be really warm for this and be very experienced with hangboarding. For max hangs, you want to do 5 to 10 second hangs, 3 to 5 sets, and 2 to 3 minutes between sets. So you're going to take a little bit longer rest between your sets, and you're only going to be on the hangboard for 5 or 10 seconds at a time. But you've got so much weight that you're going to need every second of rest you get between sets. This is going to really develop your maximum finger force and get you peaking that much better on the wall. Density hanging is a type of training protocol that trains your tendon strength. So this is more of an injury prevention type of hangboarding. For this type of training, you're actually going to spend a longer time on the hangboard for each rep. So you're going to spend up to 30 seconds hanging. So this is going to promote tissue adaptation and tendon health, as well as rehab if you are coming back from a tendon injury. A typical protocol for this type of hanging would be 30 seconds on for 2 to 3 reps and 2 to 3 minutes between each set. You're gonna need lots of rest because you're probably gonna get quite pumped hanging out on the hangboard for 30 seconds at a time. In terms of weight, it's gonna be the same as the repeaters, body weight, even less than body weight, or a small amount of weight. Next, let's talk about some one-arm hanging. So one-arm hanging is just like two-arm hanging. You'll use similar rungs and similar intensity, but of course you're only using one arm. Oftentimes when you're training one arm, you're still gonna need a little bit of assistance because you can often kind of drift or turn while you're hanging, or you can't quite get 100% of your weight on the one arm. So you can either grab a band or a rope, or even grab another rung on the hangboard itself to try to take a little bit of weight or to stabilize yourself. Training single arm hangs has a whole bunch of different uses. First of all, it can help make sure that you don't have imbalances between your left and right arms. If you're hanging off of your right arm, for example, and you can do a certain amount of weight, but you can't quite meet that weight on your left hand, then you can work a little bit harder on your left hand to make sure that you get both of those fingers at the same level before progressing both of them up. It's also beneficial if you get to the point in your training where you're adding so much weight that it's taxing on your body, or it becomes cluttered because you have to use a mix of dumbbells and kettlebells, and it's just all hanging on your harness or on your weight belt and it's uncomfortable. It's often more efficient to just switch to one-arm hangs, so that you can add less weight to your body and still train the same amount of force. Also, a more nuanced use for one-arm hanging is actually training the sensation of hanging with one arm. Oftentimes it takes a little bit of skill to be able to maneuver your body and keep it straight with just one arm. And oftentimes you will find yourself in the later grades of climbing where you are using just one arm to hold yourself on the wall. So training it on the hangboard can translate to that kind of climbing. In terms of a protocol, you'll want to do very similar to max hangs, where you do 5 to 10 seconds on per arm, 3 to 5 sets, and 2 to 3 minutes of rest between each set. In terms of adding weight to your one arm hang, it's not going to be one-to-one directly related to your 2-arm hang max weight. So you'll have to do a little bit of experimenting. Oftentimes, you might actually want to start with an assisted one-arm hang because, again, it is very different to be hanging just on the one arm and maneuver your body that way. So start with an assisted and then move forward up to body weight and then start adding weight as you get better at one-arm hanging. And again, even if you are still adding weight, you might still want to have something to stabilize yourself with your other hand, such as a rope, an elastic band, or the hangboard itself. Next is the most intense hangboard protocol that there is, and this is recruitment pulls. If you get to a point where you're training for a specific event, whether it be a competition or an outdoor trip, you might get to the point where you're peaking, which means you need to peak your hangboarding as well. And a great way to do that is through recruitment pulls. This trains your fast twitch muscles on the wall. So basically, you're going to have a very short amount of time on the hangboard. We're talking 2 or 3 seconds max. And you're going to be doing as much weight as humanly possible. So an example protocol for this would be 2 to 3 second hangs, 3 to 5 reps, and 2 or 3 minutes between each set. Recruitment hangs are, of course, very, very difficult to do. So you're going to want to make sure you're extra warm when you're doing these ones. You might want to do 2, 3, even 4 warm-up reps on the rung you're going to do before you actually go in and do your 2 or 3 second hang. So now that we've looked at what the edges are on the hangboard and what kind of protocols you can choose from, it's time to design your training program. So the first step is going to be to know what you're training. What are your goals? Is it rehab? Is it endurance? Is it power? Is it max recruitment? Decide that here so that we can guide the rest of your program. Step 2 is going to be to assess your current level. If you're newer to climbing and you're just starting out hangboarding, you're definitely going to just check to see how much you can handle. So I would recommend starting on a comfortable rung, probably not the smallest one, but maybe the one just above that, and testing to see how much weight you can handle. If it's just body weight, then perfect. We know exactly what we need to do. If you can add a little bit of weight, let's see how much weight you can do. If you need to take away some weight and use a resistance band, let's figure that out now so that we can build that into our program. So step 3, you're going to choose which edge you're going to use. Now, almost all of the protocols I listed are using just the smallest rung or the one above it. So really, I would recommend one of those two. If you want to train something like pockets or slopers, that's a little bit of a different protocol. But for your classic tendon strength, you're going to choose either the smallest one or the one above it. But which of those two edges is basically up to you. If you feel very comfortable on the smallest rung, then use the smallest rung. If you are struggling a little bit on the one above it, stick to that until you feel very confident and you're adding a little bit more weight. The rule of thumb I like to go by is you want to add more weight before you make the edge smaller. This is just a philosophy that I live by and I've trained by my entire climbing career. Essentially, this is more of an injury prevention type of philosophy where smaller rungs are a little bit more intense on your fingers. And if you're adding weight to it too fast, then that's where you can get a finger injury. So I like to stick to a more comfortable edge and get really good at that before I start downgrading. And you'll see very similar progression, this method versus going straight to the smaller one. But starting right away on the smallest edge might not be the greatest idea. So you always want to be a little overly cautious when it comes to hangboarding because finger injuries early in your climbing career are not a good mix. Step 4, we're going to choose which protocol you're going to use. So of the ones I've listed, they all have different purposes and different uses, and some of them can be used at different times of the year. For example, if you are training for a specific goal or event, you might use one protocol earlier in the year and another one closer to the event. For example, you might do density hangs earlier in the year and your recruitment pulls right before your event. Step 5, you're going to choose your weekly schedule. For me, as a professional climber, I don't actually train hangboarding more than twice a week, and I wouldn't recommend that you train more than twice a week either, especially if you're just starting hangboarding. A good rule of thumb is that you want between 2 and 3 days of rest between each hangboarding session, so 48 or 72 hours between your sessions. And again, this goes double for if you are just starting hangboarding. Your body needs time to repair and strengthen your tendons. I would choose 2 days a week and set those aside as your hangboard training days. So, how and when do you progress in your hangboarding training? No matter what protocol you use, you're going to want to scale the weight as you go. As things start to get easier, you just add a little bit of weight. With hangboarding, I like to go on the cautious side. So I'll add 2.5 pounds at a time, even 1 pound if you have that increment. Adding just a little bit of weight can make all the difference in your hangboarding. So you want to go slowly and increment just gradually to make sure there's no large jumps, because large jumps can very quickly overload your tendons and cause an injury. So we definitely don't want that. So instead, you're going to very slowly increase the weight as it starts to get easier. And there's no hard and fast rule for this. One day you might notice this feels a little bit easier than normal. That's a day where you write down in your training log, or you just make a note and say, next session, I'm gonna add 2.5 pounds. What's also very important in hangboarding is that you don't go chasing weight. Hangboarding is a long-term investment in your climbing. So by trying to go for heavier and heavier weights, you're very likely gonna get caught up in it and want to just hangboard to get a higher weight. Instead, you want to hangboard with consistency. And consistency overall is going to be more important than stacking on the weight really quickly and getting to those high numbers as soon as possible. You want to develop a consistent routine week by week and chip away at adding the weight slowly and gradually, so that over time you're going to see really, really big gains, 6 months, a year, even 2 years, 5 years from now if you stick to hangboarding routine. Let's talk about some safety and best practices when it comes to hangboard. First of all, we want to take extra care not to overtrain. I've seen so many new climbers come back with finger injuries so early in their climbing career because they pushed it with the hangboard too soon. If you feel like this might be you, pay attention to some of these signs of overtraining. If you feel any finger pain, aches, stiffness, or joint pain, that might be a sign that you are training too much on the hangboard. Also, if you have any pain while crimping, that's a telltale sign. If hangs start to feel a little bit harder, so your training is almost regressing a little bit, that can be a big red flag. And if your climbing performance on the wall is also decreasing, this is probably a sign that you're pushing it too much with the hangboarding, or even you're on the wall too much in the first place. So definitely take a look and watch for these signs and make sure to scale back your training a little bit if any of these feel remotely close. Now, finger injuries from hangboarding don't always just come from overtraining. Sometimes they come from lack of a proper warm-up. So let's talk about how to warm up properly. The easiest and most fun way to warm up for hangboarding is on the climbing wall. I like to hangboard directly after my climbing session. And typically I'll do this after my second session of the day if I'm doing double sessions. I'll wait about 10 minutes to make sure I'm not fatigued too much, and then I'll hop on the hangboard. Even though I've done a full climbing session, I still want to make sure that my fingers are fully primed and ready to hangboard. So whatever rung I'm going to be hangboarding on that day, I'll do a couple bodyweight hangs on it, about 5 or 10 seconds. Then I'll add a medium amount of weight. So if I'm going up to 100 pounds, for example, I'll add about a medium 50 or 40 pounds. And I'll do that hang real quick, just one set of 5 seconds. And then after that, I'll be ready to go. If you're someone that likes to hangboard at home and likes to warm up fully on the hangboard, there's a whole other protocol for that, and that is going to be in another video. But in general, if you're gonna warm up on your hangboard at home, you're gonna wanna hang on a whole bunch of different rungs and then switch to the rung that you're gonna be using. Start incrementing the weight up until you get to the weight that you're gonna be using. If you're someone that does bodyweight hangs or assisted hangs, your warm up is even easier. Just pull on the rung you're going to use, keeping your feet on the ground. This way, you can control how much weight you're putting on the rung and really feel if you're ready to hang. If you want to take it even a step further with your hangboard training, you can try adding some nutritional supplements and some lifestyle changes to try to really emphasize your tendon repair and all of that hangboard gains that you're making in the training room. Collagen and vitamin C can stimulate tendon repair and are great supplements to add to your daily routine to enhance your strength gains. It's also super important to eat a good amount of protein to help with that collagen formation as well. This is really a rule of thumb whenever you're climbing or training or doing any physical activity. You want to really make sure that protein intake is really high. Muscles and tendons also rebuild most of the time during your sleep. So aiming for 7.5 to 9 hours a night will really enhance that recovery and training gains. At the end of the day, there are a million ways to train hangboard. We've shown you just a few today, but there's tons more you can look up online or on YouTube that definitely work. But the key thing to remember is that no matter what protocol you choose, being consistent with it is the most important factor. Tendons take a long time to build, so it's a long-term process. You want to start your hangboarding now and be consistent with it every week. Take rest weeks when necessary, and really stick to it for months, even years on end. That's the way you'll see the most impressive strength gains from hangboarding. And don't forget, while hangboarding and finger strength is an essential tool in a rock climber's toolkit, it is only part of the puzzle, and having a good diet, nutrition, technique, all that sort of stuff comes together to make great performance on the wall. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.